Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Chris Weidenbar, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Warrant Officer Class 1, Joanne Davey. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors, by cadets on behalf of 139 Army Cadet Unit from South East Queensland, and students on behalf of the Wollongong and South Coast Legacy. I now ask you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. Those who wish, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's first World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway lands. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal John Bryson Dunsmuir. John Bryson Dunsmuir was born in 1886 in Grangemouth, Stirlingshire in Scotland, the younger son of Robert and Marion Dunsmuir. He attended boarding school in Grangemouth before migrating to Australia with his family at the age of 23. Once in Australia, he lived in Bexley in Sydney and worked as a bandsaw miller in the timber trade in Sydney and Adelaide. He also received training to carry out clerical work in a timber merchant's office. Dunsmuir enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 27th of August 1915 and commenced his training at the Liverpool camp near Sydney. On the 20th of December 1915, he embarked from Sydney aboard the troop ship Subic. Once in Egypt, he joined the 56th Infantry Battalion, which formed part of the 14th Brigade of the 5th Australian Division. He joined this unit as part of a process known as the doubling of the AIF, in which troops who had served on Gallipoli were mixed with fresh recruits to ensure that newly created and rapidly expanding Australian units retained a mix of new and experienced men. In June 1916, Dunsmuir was promoted to Lance Corporal before sailing for France and the war on the Western Front. Soon after his arrival, the 56th Battalion had its first taste of a major battle at Fromelles, the first major battle involving Australian troops on the Western Front. Australian troops of the 5th Division attacked a bulge in the German lines, known as the Sugar Loaf, but came under heavy German machine gun fire. In the failed attack, the Australian 5th Division suffered over 5,500 casualties. In early 1917, Dunsmuir and his unit took part in a series of attacks on enemy positions as the Germans withdrew to a series of well-defended trenches known as the Hindenburg Line. Later that year, they moved north of the Ypres section of Belgium. From the 24th of July until the 5th of August, Dunsmuir was on leave in the United Kingdom, and it is likely that he met up with friends and family in Scotland during this time. On the 26th of September 1917, Dunsmuir and the 56th Battalion took part in the Battle of Polygon Wood, an attack designed to capture 1,500 metres of enemy lines near the ruins of a destroyed plantation near Zonnebaker. Before the attack, as the men lay in the starting positions, Dunsmuir gave one of his friends in the trenches a cigarette case to pass on to a lady he knew in Scotland. Dunsmuir told his friend that he had a bad feeling about the battle and he had had a premonition of his death. At 5:50 a.m, Australian and British forces began laying an intense artillery barrage on German positions, and the Australian infantry leaped out of their trenches into no man's land to begin the attack. The attack was ultimately successful, but cost Australian forces over 5,770 casualties in a single day. Dunsmuir was one of those killed. As he advanced towards the German lines, an artillery shell struck him in the stomach and killed him instantly. He was 31 years old. He was buried in the Aeroplane Cemetery in Belgium, where 471 casualties of the First World War now lie. His grieving family left the inscription on his grave, "Live forevermore." His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. A photograph of his headstone is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal John Bryson Dunsmuir, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening.